Good morning, live from Costa Rica. I'm Matt Rosensteel, and I'm joined today by
Larry Graziano.
Thank you very much for coming on today, Larry.
My pleasure, Matt.
We're live on the Facebook page of Latitude 10 Rentals and Real Estate. If you're following us here, please give us a like, or if you're watching this subsequently on YouTube, please give us a subscribe as well. I very much appreciate it. We're broadcasting live from the offices of Coldwell Banker Tamarindo Realty here in Tamarindo, Guanacaste, Costa Rica, one of the most popular tourism hubs on this Pacific coast of Costa Rica. I'm Matt Rosensteel, as I mentioned, Larry Graziano, and today we're going to be talking about an extremely important topic to both of us, getting involved in your community. I think that on average we see that people who are looking to relocate here aren't necessarily just interested in buying a home or condo and sitting there, and we frequently get questions, what can I do to make Costa Rica a better place or to actually be involved in my community? Has that been your experience?
Absolutely. No, people are quite worried that when they get here, they're going to find that they become bored when they've had enough fishing and surfing and beach time. They spent a lifetime working, and now they've reached a generative stage when they're really ready to give back.
Yeah, retirees oftentimes in many communities, tourism hubs or outside of them, even in smaller rural areas, are able to really find meaningful ways to keep their passion alive or do something that isn't just eating, drinking, surfing, sleeping, getting a suntan. And for us, especially, I think it's extremely important when we're inviting people to be part of our community. We never want to see that kind of buyer who comes down and is a negative impact, much less on the opposite. We'd rather see them come down and contribute far beyond their initial investment of buying a condo. And whenever that happens, it's a huge pleasure. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comment section of the Facebook video. Or if you want to follow up with us, we're both available by email. I'm at matt@cbtamarindo.com, and Larry is larry@cbtamarindo.com.
Exactly.
Feel free to send us a note with any more questions or if there's anything we can do to help you. Today, the topics we'll be talking about, and my PowerPoint kind of bled over there. First, we'll discuss briefly Costa Rican community needs and try and give people an idea of what sort of meaningful options there are for them to contribute. Then we'll go over a couple organizations that I've brought up in previous broadcasts, ADIs and ASADAs, which are really sort of the only local political bodies, or you could call it local politics as a way to get involved. Then we'll talk about nonprofits, donations, and finally we'll end with some do's and don'ts tips to try and avoid making mistakes or not having a good experience if you decide to get involved in your community. So thank you very much for joining us. We've got 4 people online so far. Away we're going to go here with our interview. Again, I'm here with Larry Graziano. And I wanted to start, first of all, by specifically calling out a lot of people, or rather generally calling them out and saying, thank you very much to the thousands of expats, foreigners, people who have come to Costa Rica and taken that path of contributing positively. I can think of a million names from our community. There are volunteer firefighters. There are local government officials. There are people who have formed their own nonprofits for everything from local security to castrating dogs and keeping the stray dog population down. So this is not just an episode where we're going to talk about what we're doing, but we want to laud all of the people who have come down here and are doing this. There are thousands out there who come to Costa Rica and make a difference. Thank you very much. Larry and I love Costa Rica a lot, and everybody contributing positively makes us very happy people. I've been monopolizing things, but that's all right. First, I'm going to start here. Larry, tell us a bit about your background with regards to Costa Rica, why you came here, and some of the ways you found to be involved in your community.
Okay, well, that's a mouthful. Get ready. Grab your coffee. I originally discovered Costa Rica via surfing. I came for a few trips. Each one became more and more often and much longer. I came from one of the most beautiful places in all of the United States, Sanibel and Captiva Islands in southwest Florida. But the reason for moving here, my story is a love story. I met a lovely Argentinian girl in the place where I live in Playa Negra. We fell in love. Naturally, this was shortly thereafter 911. My family thought I was crazy, quote unquote. Why are you going to move to the islands? Which we know is poorly said, since we're on an isthmus here. After only spending a couple of months, but I knew it. And here I am, 17 years later, as happily married as I was the day we met. So I'm absolutely a success story in that respect.
Congratulations. Last week I had Tony DiMaggio on, and his story for arriving in Costa Rica was pretty unique. This one, just a love story, pure and simple. You've been here for 17 years, though. What's kept you here instead of taking your family anywhere else in the world?
The pure quality lifestyle that you find here, Matt. It's unbelievable. What really initially attracted me to Costa Rica and Playa Negra specifically is the first time that I arrived. After I stopped hearing my cell phone ring in my head after a few days, I realized that there were no Mercedes driving down the street. There were no billboards. There were no first world distractions, which enabled me to have an interior freedom I had never felt ever previously. And once that began to well up inside of me, I was sold on the country.
Cool. And as realtors, I think a lot of times we're focused on helping that person. Mistakenly, we're focused on finding that perfect condo or that perfect house. But really what comes out in all of the people that I talk to in these interviews is the transformation in the quality of life, all of the sort of peripheral, non-quantifiable or unquantifiable things that aren't necessarily, oh, I got a great deal on a condo. Well, I started taking walks on the beach every single day. My blood pressure went down. We started talking more as a family.
They lose weight.
Yeah.
You lose weight because you're not eating chips and sodas. You're eating quality, healthy food all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that transformation is really what people need to be focused on. I think we can find houses. There are condos. There are beachfronts. There are mountaintops. You can live here, but what you're gonna really benefit from, in addition to your home, is the lifestyle change that you get. Definitely. What are a few things just to touch? I forwarded too soon. Oh, hey, Sarah Smith. Thank you very much for your comment. Appreciate it. We love the simplicity too, and we're looking forward to helping you come down here. Tell us a few things really quickly that you've done to be involved in your community.
Oh, the list is long. I'm currently a part of 4 nonprofit organizations, a joint founder of one called Salve Monos. We help the local howler monkey population. We roughly have about 800 monkey bridges up in the area. After 15 years, statistically saving 20,000 plus monkeys a year from electrocution. I'm a board member of a nonprofit that you invited me to called Restoring Our Watershed, which is a noble pursuit to return an aquifer and forest, thereby creating a river that runs again. We are in a tropical dry forest here, which means that there is little rain during a good course of the year. But traditionally in this area, most of the main rivers ran all year long. And there's many facets to that. I've been a board member of the Chamber of Realtors here in Costa Rica for 5 years. We're doing everything we can to professionalize the industry with the main goal of ensuring that final consumers are protected as best they can. I've seen a lot of tragedies over the years as a realtor here, and I'd like to do everything I can to ensure that everybody has a seamless transition from one country to the next. And then
Chamber of Commerce.
lastly, I'm a founder and president of a local chamber of commerce where we live. And actually, the long-term goal there is just to keep tourism flowing throughout the year to ensure that the people, the locals that live there, have the opportunity to achieve the lifestyle that they want to achieve.
Great. For nonprofits, Larry's been here for 17 years, but I think one of the things I hope to accomplish today is give people ideas that it doesn't take 17 years for you to get involved in for nonprofits and do all this. There are hundreds of organizations desperately looking for help, and as soon as you hit the ground here in Costa Rica, you can hit the ground running and get moving on your community involvement. Brad, great to have you here today. Thanks very much for your comment. He said, thanks for the remark about eating better. Brad's coming in a couple of weeks. Oh no, it's snowing again in Maine. And we also have, Juanito Ranchitos.
Oh, wonderful.
Is also joining us as well from Playa Negra. So we've got some local visitors as well joining today. I wanted to first, now I've got to go back over to my PowerPoint here. Let's talk briefly about, foreigners might have no realistic idea of what Costa Rican communities actually need. Something that I see very often, Costa Rica is a developing country, or, there are lots of different words you could describe stuff that's not the US or Canada or Europe. To me, I don't see a gigantic need outside of extreme circumstances for nutrition, for example, that most communities are at least able to feed the families they're in. What are some kinds of things that you see that might be really those things where foreigners can make a meaningful difference in their community?
It might seem so simple and trite, but if you're just coming on vacation, bring a couple of deflated soccer balls. One soccer ball provides enjoyment for over 20 children on an annual basis. It's that simple. If you bought and you settled in a rural town outside of Tamarindo, you can order cheap soccer nets for the local Plaza de football field in your town.
Yeah.
Little tiny and cheap things like that will go a long way in helping humble local peoples appreciate people that are coming in, making an actual difference.
Yeah.
On the other side of that, my favorite success story in Costa Rica, I sold a property to a couple about 15 years ago. One of my first. It's actually property that I had bought myself. They're a couple from New York, the Stones. They live in Venado. Wonderful people. They saw a need in their town to help a town of about 75 or 80 people. They live here only part-time. They have a business in the United States. They developed a nonprofit specifically to help that town. In the course of every year, they have a gala event, and they have charity events, and every year they're pumping about $15,000 to $20,000 in that community. So one year the agenda item might be to renovate the school and then bring computers for the children. They've taught young guys how to build businesses. They've helped the community reach the Blue Flag program for the beach. Their input is never ending, but it's small inputs, one thing at a time, so they're not overwhelmed. And also, the community members aren't overwhelmed by this drastic change.
Yeah, and they're a great example, I think, in general, whereas we can't say what Costa Rican communities need as a blanket example. Instead, I guess the advice is get to know your community take a stake in it. And, if you're going to try and make a difference, try and figure out what that specific need is. I know you were talking about the things they've done in those projects are trying to generate local employment, help the kids get a better education because the school system in their particular community is underachieving. But what they've done is really, with the people of that town, identify different needs and then start to look for solution to those. And really, for anybody coming here, I think that leaving preconceived ideas of what these communities might actually benefit from back in the US or Canada or Europe, wherever you're coming from, leave that notion behind, wait till you're there, get a feel for things, and learn about it. And if not, like Larry said, a couple of deflated soccer balls, especially in these communities where kids oftentimes have none of their own pocket money and their parents are very, on very humble means, a couple of soccer balls will keep kids busy for years.
Absolutely.
In a team sport that doesn't involve direct head-on-head violence, what could be better? Anyhow, we'll move on. There are two organizations in communities that are the closest thing to any political organization that a small community has. In previous broadcasts, I've talked about ADIs and ASADAs. Essentially, an ADI, or Asociación de Desarrollo Integral, the initials, is a local body that is allowed to legally represent the community in requesting government support. It's usually a committee. The ADI is usually a board of directors of maybe 5 to 7 people, maybe as many as 10, with a body of associates that are the members of that community. Have you seen foreigners get very involved in their Asociación de Desarrollo, or how do you see foreigners supporting their ADI?
Well, let's take Tamarindo, for example. The president of the ADI in Tamarindo is a gentleman from Argentina, and he's driven enormous and positive change here in the community. It doesn't necessarily only have to be a body of locals, because as we know, in any place on the planet, the more positive thinkers, the more direct change will happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are communities, I think especially in larger communities, you see them taking direct roles. Oftentimes, though, I think there's a million other ways. And first of all, one of the things that you can do is simply join your local Asociación de Desarrollo.
Absolutely.
Attend the annual assembly of associates. And in that assembly, you generally vote on a budget and a work plan for the year. And even showing up and contributing your vote and your time and energy helps, because they simply need to have the approval of the town to be able to move forward with their projects. Another a slew of ways that people can help their ADI. Invariably, there will be parties, fiestas, bull riding, fundraisers, bingos, all kinds of ways that the ADI will be raising money in your community. And as an Asociación de Desarrollo, anything they raise has to be for the benefit of the community. There's transparency through annual reporting in that assembly. And I think one of the ways also that foreigners can really help is to show up to those events, help out. If they're having a bingo, they're raffling prizes, you can donate a blender or donate a coffee maker, just somehow to show your support and also bring a little bit of what we might have more of than a lot of local community members as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. ASADAs, to be brief, are the local water administrators, also a committee in general of locally elected people with at times a small paid staff. Sometimes they're entirely volunteer. How do foreigners interact with their ASADA, and what kinds of things can they expect to do with them?
In my experience, most often foreigners don't form a part of the board of the ASADA, but they often give intellectual and financial support to those asadas in order for them to move forward on aiding the asada to expand its reach to the community.
Yeah. Recently in Playa Negra, there's a project almost near completion where an asada needed to extend their lines up to the communities of Lagartillo and Playa Negra or Los Pargos
Right.
in order to provide water service up there. And the government required that the community raise a total of how much?
Initially, 88,000, I think, was the number for studies, design, and then another $160,000 to complete the project.
Wow. So almost $250,000 that they needed to raise. If you imagine a local Costa Rican community, Paraíso is maybe 500, 600 Costa Ricans. That would therefore be $500 per person in that community that was needed.
And that amount equals more than the general monthly salary of a good portion of Costa Ricans.
Yeah. So this was an example where foreigners, Brenda, many others, did an incredible job organizing an effort among local businesses, generous individuals, developers, on and on, to raise an amount of money that would have been impossible for the community.
Insurmountable.
Yeah, especially the communities of Lagartillo and Pargos. Those people, the total annual salary of most of those households is nowhere near enough to contribute $500 to a water infrastructure project.
But what's most encouraging is nearly every single person that's going to be served by the public water, which is in great need here in the tropical dry forest. There were donations of $8, $12,
yeah,
$20. Every single person, no matter how humble their means, donated.
Yeah, absolutely. Really encouraging in that instance, and a sign where a local organization needed support from foreigners, and working together they accomplished. They've put in that pipe, they've put in tanks, now electrical systems, and there are needs like that all over Costa Rica.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people, especially if you're looking for a gorgeous, secluded forest home, people's idea is to oftentimes sort of wrap themselves in an oasis when maybe there's a dire community need like this, where they could go and talk to either the members of their ADI or the members of their ASADA and say, how can I help you? Oftentimes they will produce a list about this long, and you can contribute in ways that make sense for you. Not necessarily being outside and losing your oasis, but supporting the broader community instead of just your tiny part of it.
Absolutely. Yep.
Nonprofit organizations. So Larry, let's say I've just moved to Rio Seco de Santa Cruz, Guanacaste, and I see that, wow, there is a really high teenage dropout rate from high school. I want to solve this problem. I want to do this legally and effectively in the community. I want to raise money. I want to find grants. I'm an ambitious foreigner with hours on hand to do this project. What do I do?
You're going to start with your trusted lawyer who helped you with your closing. Believe it or not, you'll find that your lawyer wants to help you, and oftentimes you could cajole your lawyer into filing the bureaucratic paperwork necessary almost at no cost in order to start your Costa Rican nonprofit. Matt and I, we both know that the number one way to get sizable charitable donations would be through a U.S. 501c3 nonprofit. Mm-hmm. So you're going to also channel your entire network to help you in that respect, in order to have the funding necessary to conquer your problem.
Yeah, Larry was discussing, with the lawyer, setting up a Costa Rican nonprofit, which here is called an asociación or association. That nonprofit works legally or functionally almost exactly like the Asociación de Desarrollo.
Exactly.
There are associates, there are board of directors. The associates meet annually and can manage who's in charge of the organization by election. I think the main difference between this nonprofit asociación and the Asociación de Desarrollo would just be the mission, which you set up an asociación específica, or a specific one with a mission to address the cause of your choice. It won't be an asociación de desarrollo because those have to be formed with only the mission that is adopted by the national government, etc. But by forming that asociación, you can channel resources down here.
Absolutely.
And I've actually found that there are fiduciary intermediaries in the US or Canada or Europe, everywhere, that have the mission to support nonprofit work in Costa Rica. And oftentimes forming your US nonprofit or one abroad to be able to get that tax deductible donation, that's already happened. For example, in the case of Costa Rica, if you live in the US, Amigos of Costa Rica is an organization that accepts a broad range of donations from US taxpayers who want to get a break by donating to a 501c3. And Amigos will send funding down to their approved list of nonprofits here in the country.
Absolutely. And they've already vetted every single one of those nonprofits, so you know that your money is safe going into the hands of the people that actually need it.
Yeah. So that sort of intermediary can be very useful, so that if you're setting up a Costa Rican nonprofit, you could establish a relationship with somebody like that, not necessarily need your own 501c3, but go through their process to become an approved recipient, and then you can tell your network, donate to Amigos, the funding comes down here, you get your tax donation, and I get to solve what I get to help.
Problem,
yeah,
Rio Seco.
Yeah, education, monkeys, dogs, on and on. And I think that people will find that in many communities where foreigners are already active, there are 6 or 7 existing nonprofits working on cause A, B, C, D, E, or F. And there's limitless opportunity with existing ones as well.
My greatest recommendation is let your passion drive you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're passionate about keeping the street clean, get out with a trash bag and pick up trash once a week. Go to the beach, do the same. In my case, I'm an absolute nature nerd, so I'm involved in 2 environmental organizations. I'm also passionate about buyers' rights, and so I joined the board of realtors and subsequently became a board member.
Yep.
Take your passion and let that drive you.
Yeah, absolutely. Should have put an interactive question, what's your passion, and found a nonprofit for everybody watching today. We kind of touched on donations a little bit. There are intermediaries in the US, and I imagine every country on the planet, or many of the countries that are sending people to Costa Rica. Have you seen any examples of misguided donations, or ones that maybe didn't just have a positive impact but also had some negative impacts in the community?
I haven't really seen negative impacts. I think the key to your question for me is misguided. Often I will see expats, no matter what nation they're from, they're expats. They'll make direct donations to a household, and oftentimes that's where the misguided funds go.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, you know, Costa Rica is sort of a victim of its own success. There's been great relationships between foreigners and locals for decades now. I mean, longer back, but really strong and numerous in recent years. And so some Costa Rican families do realize that foreigners want to help and see people walking around as an opportunity. And where passionate foreigners who want the world to be a better place see a problem and decide to help out, they might just be making a donation to a family giving them something that, either doesn't address a real pressing priority. Maybe it's a family situation where the donation is going to be sold or, whatever happens. And so you'd recommend instead that people donate through organizations that understand the groundwork or what's at stake.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, time and time again on the broadcasts, we come around to the importance of local knowledge. And that's something where figuring out who the active players are, who's legitimate, who's going to manage the funds well, who's actually going to accomplish their mission, is something that you need to interview all kinds of local stakeholders about so that you get that information, because there's not a better business bureau down here. We don't have the same types of oversight organizations
Absolutely.
Monitoring that.
But I think that you'll find in general, and you'll be quite amazed, that small nonprofits in Costa Rica are almost exclusively volunteer-based. So when you make a donation, for example, to the Red Cross for the Haiti earthquake, of which, $1 billion came to them and they built 50 houses, you make a donation to a Costa Rican nonprofit, generally speaking, 100% of your donation dollars go directly to the cause.
Yep. And that's something that you can ask for to get more information about what they're doing with your funding, that's for sure. Do's and don'ts, we've talked about a couple. One that came up that was very interesting, that's totally escaping me at the moment at a previous point. How do you see foreigners struggling with getting involved in their community, or where's the obstacle stopping people in different circumstances?
I think I'm going to deviate a bit from your question.
Okay.
Foreigners in general have a way of life that they've enjoyed forever. Ease of access to Walmart and PriceSmart and services. They've come to accept that when they make an appointment with somebody, that at that specific hour or earlier, the person shows up. I think that the biggest struggle comes in the reality of the inner workings and customs of Latin America. So, for example, your dishwasher broke, you called the repairman to come. He tells you that he'll be there at 9 o'clock, and 10 o'clock rolls around, you haven't had a call, and you're frustrated. And that's normal. You have to imagine that in general, on the coast of this country, and in Latin America in general, we have 12 hours of sunlight every day. The sun comes up at 5 and goes down at 5. People never had a need for an alarm clock in their lifetime. They're not motivated by the same traditional means you are. They know that at 8 o'clock they have to show up to work. They've been awake for 3 hours, and they had a problem with the motorcycle, so they show up at 8:30. This is acceptable. You have to peel off your previous customs in order to really feel comfortable here.
Yeah, especially in trying to accomplish good work. I think from my standpoint, the clearest obstacle for foreigners is just the disillusionment that in dealing with that transition between cultures. Well, we called a community meeting. We invited 175 people with personal invitations to address this urgent need, and only 4 people from the community showed up 2 hours late. And a lot of times, foreigners have an incredibly tough time dealing with that and sticking with what they're trying to accomplish in this context of a totally different culture. Any advice on getting through it?
It occurs to me a quote from my all-time number one hero, Alvaro Ugalde, who incidentally started the park system in Costa Rica. He mentioned in a Time magazine interview that you don't need to be the person that creates the change. You only need the person to be the person that inspires the passion in others to create the change.
Yeah, exactly. Thinking of yourself more as the spark maybe lighting a fuse instead of directly lighting the stick of dynamite or whatever we're blowing up. I wholeheartedly agree. And I think in my years as a Peace Corps volunteer, if anything fruitful resulted, it's that a few people in the community where I lived and worked for 2 years are new leaders in that community, and that slowly you see people notice that there's a different way, that there's something more, in this case, more organized, or you know, a vision of community involvement. And if we can get those few people on board with a culture of improving your community and ignite in local leaders the inspiration to do their own thing, that's much more powerful than necessarily putting in that telephone booth or the water line or whatever you're building personally. And that can be an extremely long process. People don't just change one day to the next, and inspiration isn't something that you can just force feed.
No, you sure can't.
Yeah. That being said, I'll open it up if anybody has any questions out there that they want to post for me or Larry regarding getting involved in your community here in Costa Rica. We'll be more than happy to field them before we wrap up here. Today we sort of gave a brief overview of foreigners and getting involved in Costa Rica communities. We touched on local political bodies, the Asociación de Desarrollo and the ASADA. We also mentioned specific nonprofits and how you can work with those or form your own. We talked a little bit about some examples that we've seen of foreigners doing well, getting frustrated, having troubles. Is there anything you'd like to add at this point?
Honestly, we just love to have you come down here and make a small difference in your own way. Whatever that is, whether it's bringing the soccer balls for the children, making a beach cleanup, painting signs to tell people to go slower on the roads, whatever inspires you will help to make a huge difference in this little paradise on earth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on the other end, the results you see are that your Costa Rica life is far richer, that your standing in the community is better, and that you actually have a chance to meaningfully interact with the people that you're here to live with, that you're asking for residency from. You know, they see foreigners come and go. They see surfers come and do nothing but drink and party and have fun and leave a bunch of plastic and, you know, disorder behind them. They also see inspiring examples, you know, some of the most extreme cases, foreigners starting the Monteverde National Reserves, parks that have been launched on efforts of foreigners. In our own community, we're seeing that foreigners have helped bring water to new communities. And those people can look at other Costa Ricans in their community with an entirely different interaction than the foreigners who come, live in their oasis, and leave only to drive to the supermarket, the movie theater, or the beach. And so I also think that it's a huge benefit to everybody considering moving here to consider, how am I going to fall into that latter category and be someone that's not just here to enjoy their jungles and their beaches, but give back and really become a member of the community.
Absolutely, just like you would do at home.
Yeah, exactly. With that, thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Larry, for joining me.
Thanks, man, for having me.
Appreciate it very much. Be seeing you around, I'm sure. And with that, we'll go ahead and draw this episode number 13 now of Costa Rica FAQ, or Live from Costa Rica, to a close. Please feel free to send us an email to either Matt or Larry at cbtamarindo.com. We're open for your questions. Thanks again. Have a great day, and pura vida.
Pura vida.